Hello my friends, this is Sylvie Curry, Lady of Q, and I'm once again in my kitchen. Today I'm going to be making a potato corn chowder with shrimp, and it's going to be really good. I know I've been away for a while from YouTube, but I promised you guys that I would make this recipe and do it on YouTube so that you can see what I went through to make this soup. It's hearty, it's nice for nice cold days, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Let's do this. Let me show you what I got. These are my ingredients. And once again, I said there are a lot of different components to this soup. Most of the time in making this is prep. Let me go through what I have. I've got 2 cups of chicken broth, and you can use more depending on the thickness that you want of your soup. I've got some jalapeno cheddar sausage, and this is going to be optional. I'm not going to add it to the soup directly, but I'm going to have it on the side for my friends to add to their soup. I have some people who are coming over who don't eat meat, so that's why I'm going to do this to the side. I have about 1.5 pounds of diced potatoes of the Yukon Gold. I've got a 12-ounce package of frozen corn. You can use 1 can of corn also, depends on what you have. I have a package of shrimp, and this is a 12-ounce package of shrimp. It is peeled, deveined, and the tails off, and that makes it much easier, especially going into a soup. You don't want your friends having to go through and peel it or take the tails off themselves. It's also deveined. I've got celery, and this is about 3 celery stalks that are diced. I've got some roasted poblano chilies, and these are, I guess I have maybe about 3 or 4 chilies that I previously roasted, and then I just diced them up, and I'm going to use this in this soup. I've got some milk, and I'm going to be using coconut milk instead of cream. It's got a creamy texture to it, and it gives it a nice flavor in the background, that coconut. Not overly coconutty, but that coconut flavor. This makes this soup friendly for those who are lactose intolerant. Got some hot sauce, I'm going to season to taste with that. Sour cream, I'm going to be using about 1/2 to 2/3 cup of sour cream. I've got 3 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to be using the butter, melting it in order to make the roux with some all-purpose flour that I have. Now for the flour, you can use regular all-purpose flour, or if you have people who are gluten-free, you can use a gluten-free flour. Works just as well. Here I have 8 ounces of shredded mozzarella cheese, and I shredded this myself. I've got about 4 or 5 cloves of garlic minced. There's some salt here, and that's going to be to taste. I'm starting off with about 2 teaspoons. I've got a teaspoon here of paprika, and about a 1/4 teaspoon of dried thyme, and I have about a teaspoon of white pepper. And I'm using white pepper just so that it doesn't discolor the soup with little black flakes in it. I've got some sweet bell peppers here, and these are yellow and orange, and that's about 3 of them. And I've got a medium onion diced. In addition, I've got some Parmesan cheese, which I grated. You can use the ones that's already grated, but I have this in the refrigerator, so that's what I'm going to be using. So these are all my ingredients. Let's get started in making this potato corn chowder with shrimp. I'm going to start off by boiling my potatoes and cooking them beforehand. That way I have better control of getting them done and not overcooked in the soup. I'm also going to add some salt to this water. And we're just cooking it until it gets tender and I can put a fork or a toothpick in it and it's slightly tender. Later on, I'm going to add it to the soup towards the end with the shrimp. I have 3 tablespoons of butter melting in my Dutch oven, and I'm going to use a large Dutch oven for this because I'm making a pretty big batch. Once this is melted, I'll then add my all-purpose flour. And as I mentioned before, you can use regular all-purpose flour or you can use gluten-free. I'm now going to add the celery, onion, and bell pepper. I'm not going to add the poblano chilies yet. I'll add those a little bit later. I'm not going to add the poblano chili yet. As mentioned before, these have already been roasted previously, so they're already cooked some. So I've got the bell pepper and the onion. That's going in. And we're going to cook this for 2, 3, 4 minutes, just long enough to get a little wilting on the celery, onion, and bell pepper. My potatoes have finished. They're toothpick tender, and so I'm just going to leave these in the water. I'm going to rinse it off and get rid of that scum, and I'll leave these to the side and add it later. I'm now going to add the garlic, and we like a lot of garlic in this family, so if you want less, feel free to add less. If you want more, feel free to add more. And we'll let this go until that garlic is fragrant. Smelling real yummy up in here. I love the smell of garlic. I'm going to now add my chicken broth. And I used better than bouillon and just added it to some water and allowed it to dissolve. I'm also going to note that we may also need to add a little bit more water to this depending on the thickness. So let that cook for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then I'm going to add my coconut milk. My coconut milk is a substitute for cream. You can see how that's already thickening up. And actually, before I add the coconut milk, I'm going to add those poblano chilies. The roasted chilies gives this a really nice smoky type flavor. See, I'm pretty thick right now. Let's go in with the coconut milk. We're going to stir that around till it gets bubbly. My mixture has started to bubble, so we're going to move on to the next step, which is to add the sour cream. Stir that around a little bit more. And I'm adding about a little more than a half a cup. And then we're going to let that combine. Get that sour cream to melting. The sour cream has been incorporated. I'm now going to add the cheese, the mozzarella and the Parmesan. We're going to do this slowly because we want it to completely melt. And if you put it all in there at one time, you get a big clump, and it's going to be harder to get it incorporated and smooth. Now before this cheese completely melts, the mixture is going to look slightly, what's the term I want to use? Slightly curdled, but it's not. It's just that cheese trying to get all melty. We have 8 ounces mozzarella cheese going in first. Upon adding this cheese, it's also going to get much thicker. And it's at this point that you can determine if you want to add more water or chicken broth. I have added all of the mozzarella cheese, and now I'm going to add the Parmesan. One of the things you'll note, I haven't added any of the seasonings yet. And the primary reason for that, especially for the salt, is that these cheeses do have quite a bit of salt in them. Also note that you should stir this quite often, and that's because you don't want the bottom to scorch and burn. I'm going to do a little taste just to see where I am as far as seasonings are concerned. Hot, hot, hot. We have a long ways to go on seasoning, so I'm going to start off by adding the white pepper, the thyme, paprika, and this is about 2 teaspoons of salt. That paprika really adds to the color of the chowder, making it look really much more rich. I checked for salt, and I did add another, actually 2 teaspoons of salt. And now I'm going to add the corn. Now that was 12 ounces of corn. You can add a little bit more if you wanted to. The cans of corn, I think, are 14.5 ounces. I've got some hot sauce, and you can use whatever hot sauce that you like. And I'm going to add just a few sprinklings of it. Not too much because I don't like it too hot. That's probably less than, what, a half teaspoon, maybe a quarter teaspoon. In addition, I'm going to put a few red pepper flakes in it. And that's just to give it an extra kick. Next, I'm going to add in those potatoes that I cooked previously till tender. Stir that around. I'm going to wait a little bit because I know I'm going to have to adjust the seasonings again for those potatoes. I'm not going to add the shrimp until just before serving because we don't want those shrimp to overcook. I added the shrimp and see the pieces there, and we'll just wait till this shrimp warm up and turn nice and pink and ready to serve.
Were we in the background?